and it refers to valuation date. Okay. Now let me go to this question, and let me just figure out who's the participant to ask here. Let me ask Pramendra Gupta. Pramendra Gupta, can you tell me what's the answer to this? Pramendra, will you be able to take up this answer? Unless.
What's the question, sir?
Okay, this is Surya Narayan, right? This is the question. Can you see the question? From when is Section 247 of Companies Act 2013 made applicable? 15.6, 14.7, 18.10, 1.2.
Sorry, not sure, sir.
Okay, so let me ask anybody else. Let's say Sampath Kumar, do you want to take a stab at this? Or Gajendra?
Sir, it is option C.
18th October.
18th October, great. You had enough time to Google, but I know that you would have been affected by this when you were doing valuations. So, Gajendra, you're a chartered accountant?
Yes, sir. I'm a chartered accountant in practice.
You're also doing valuations, right? So, you know, this is what has hit us sometime back.
Correct. True, sir.
Okay. Right. So, that's
Sir,
the right
we
answer.
also have the presentation which was shared.
Okay. Okay. So, that makes life more difficult for me. Okay. So, who appoints the valuer to value any property, shares, stock, or any other assets of a company? So, this Yusuf is logged into two IDs. So, Yusuf, you want to take a stab at this?
Yeah. So the question is,
who appoints the registered valuer?
Registered valuer.
The CFO.
I think nomination committee.
Nomination committee. Okay. So normally the nomination committee appoints other directors and so on, right? So they select the directors.
Okay.
Okay. So it's good that you're actually making an attempt at this, even though you had the presentation with you. So Swati, one word, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah. If it is a listed company, should it be an audit committee?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And in its absence?
Should be the CFO then?
No, it will be the board of directors.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, Yusuf, I think that you have to remember this. Okay.
Yes,
that is the audit committee. This is a standard question. It will come in your exam. Okay. You have to remember this.
Sure.
Okay. Then moving on. The registered valuer
Sir,
rules.
what about chartered accountants? If they have a partnership firm and if they are auditing certain companies, can one partner do the stat audit and the other partner do the evaluation? Hello? Hello?
Rahul, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rahul.
Yes, sir. Rahul. Hello? Hello?
Rahul, we can hear your voice. I don't know if sir is able to hear your voice.
Okay.
I think probably sir is logged off. Maybe we can't see him connected right now.
Yeah, he's muted.
Yeah, sorry. I had a problem when I think my internet was slightly unstable. So now I've just moved. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, Rahul, your question was, once again, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So if a chartered accountant has a partnership firm and if one partner is doing a stat audit and the other partner is doing the valuation, nothing is specified in this section specifically.
Okay. So see, you can't really do it. And let me explain why.
Okay.
See, when a chartered accountant's firm is signing an audit report, it needs to comment on it needs to make a judgment on the valuation report also. Okay. Because the valuation report will actually have it will have an impact on the financial statements for certain purposes. Okay. So therefore, an audit firm cannot comment on a report a valuation report which has been done by itself. That's not possible. Now, the second thing is, which we will come to, is in relation to, can a valuer issue a report in his firm name? He can't. He has to do it in his individual capacity.
Can he do that?
in his individual capacity, he has to do it, not in his firm name.
Yeah. Can he do that in an
Can
individual
do it.
capacity?
He can do it in his individual capacity, but his audit firm cannot. His audit firm cannot comment on it. Cannot do the audit. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on. We'll come to it in a bit more of time. Okay. So the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, by its notification dated 18/10/2017, has delegated powers to the IBPI.
Hello.
Yes.
One more question on the same thing. After completing this course, do we have to issue the report in the individual name or the firm's name?
So Ashish, let's come to this. Let's come to this in a bit. Okay. Let's come to this because we'll be actually covering it. Just hold on to the question. Let me just ask you, can you see my screen?
No, you need to share the screen.
So you need to share the screen.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think that when I got logged off, my screen also was sort of removed. It's always good to get the feedback so that at least we know where we are. Okay, so IBPI has been appointed as the authority under this act. And then the next point is that the authority is specified as IBPI. A registered valuer is a person registered with the authority in accordance with these rules. Registered valuer organization means the organization recognized under 13.5. Valuation standards means the standards on valuation referred in Rule 18. We'll come to this in a bit. Eligibility. Now let's cover this. Eligibility, qualifications and restrictions of valuers. Eligibility. A valuer member of an RVO is recommended by the RVO, has passed the exam within 3 years preceding the date of application for registration. So first, the point here is that within 3 years, you have to get registered. Now, you have to keep in mind there's a valuer's bill, which has been just introduced, and everything can change here. However, for the moment, this is what we are following. Okay. So let's go with what is here in this act and in the rules. Possesses the qualifications and experience specified in Rule 4, is not a minor, has not been declared to be of unsound mind, is not an undischarged bankrupt, is a person resident in India, is a fit and proper person. In this case, fit and proper person means integrity, reputation, and character, absence of convictions, and solvency. Has not been convicted for an offense with imprisonment exceeding 6 months, or for an offense involving moral turpitude, and 5 years have not elapsed from the date of expiry of sentence, nor has been levied a penalty under Section 271J. So here, let me just go back to the chat screen and figure out. There were some questions. I'll just come to that in a moment. In the meantime, let me just ask one of you. Any of the chartered accountants, the 271J, has anybody been faced with any, or are you aware of 271J issues? Let me not ask you if you've been faced with it. Let me just ask you if you're aware of what it means.
That is a false mentioning, false certification.
False certification in the tax audit report.
Yes. In any report for that matter.
On professionals, yes.
Yes, by the chartered accountant, then income tax department will issue the notice.
Okay, right. So if any person has been levied a penalty under 271J, he is not entitled to be a valuer. That is basically the point of this. Okay. Now, the other restrictions are offense with imprisonment exceeding 6 months, offense involving moral turpitude, 5 years have not elapsed. Now, there is a case of a chartered accountant who issued a valuation report. This is prior to the valuation, this particular act, this section coming into effect. So the case law is that he passed the exam, valuer's exam, and then applied to IBPI for registration as a valuer. And in the meantime, that case was going on, which was, he was respondent number 13, I think, in a case which is probably under section 420 and so on. He had issued a valuation report. The people who had actually done the, whatever was to be done were the other people. Now, in this case, what is the view of people? That is, let me ask JSR Chavan, for instance. Chavan, will you be able to answer? I think Chavan is not able to unmute, or he's gone for a break. Okay, so let me ask anybody else. Now, anybody wants to take this and answer this? Can such a person be considered as okay, let me phrase the question once again. The question is, this person has not been convicted. He's a chartered accountant. There's a case filed against him. He has not been convicted. Can he be prevented from being a valuer?
But if there is something to prove that there has been negligence on his part, I think there is every reason as to why he should not be empaneled.
Okay, so you believe that basically if something could be proved, but no, see,
Yeah,
when he sent
He
his
is not
application,
convicted yet. In my opinion, Manoj here is, since he is not convicted yet, in my opinion, he can take.
The section clearly says whether the penalty is levied under 271. Tell me, if he is levied penalty, he cannot.
yeah, so that's a different section. That's a different part. One is penalty under 271J, but this is just any case which has been levied. In this case, it is under Criminal Procedure Code. A case has been filed against him for issuing a valuation report with intent to deceive. That's what the CBI claims, but it's not reached the court. There is no final judgment as yet.
So if he's not convicted, can he still be barred? To my mind, it says that one has to be convicted for that particular crime. Then only he probably will be debarred. But in case of the case is still going and has not been convicted, I think he should be still allowed.
Yeah, that's what most of us think as ordinary citizens of this country. However, you have to keep in mind that there is other section here is a fit and proper person. Now, this fit and proper person, they say that in case somebody has filed a case against you, then in that case you are not a fit and proper person, which is why you cannot become a valuer. So that was what IBBI decided, that because he has a case filed against him for offense which is in relation to valuation, where he has been considered to be one of the defendants for a false valuation. Therefore, he is not a fit and proper person, because in general, the public will not get the confidence that he is able to do a valuation properly. Okay, that's basically the judgment. That's what the judgment of IBBI says. Okay. So Tushar, to that extent, you have to keep it in mind, because
So
Tushar
will this
says that,
not lead to unnecessary so-called litigation against the valuer?
yes,
Also
it has to
because
be litigated. I mean, if people want to litigate, they can litigate against IBBI. If you are saying a litigation against registration, you can file in the court and then decide as to let the court decide.
No, I'm saying, if there is a valuer, right, who's doing his valuation, and, this particular paragraph is pretty wide, when we say is a fit and proper person, integrity, reputation, character, absence of conviction, and solvency. Now, any person who files, case against a valuer can impact his entire practice of being a valuer, right? But is it not too harsh a stand taken by the court? Because to my mind, this is pretty vast, in terms of areas, and probably will give to a lot of fake suits also being filed, in case if that kind of interpretation is taken by the court.
You're right, but this is currently where it stands, because nobody has really taken it to court as to against the registration. See, for instance, let's look at this section. If he has not been convicted for an offense with imprisonment exceeding 6 months, offense involving moral turpitude, and 5 years have not elapsed from the date of expiry of sentence. So here they say that after 5 years, okay, you can become a valuer, even if you've been convicted. Okay, but under fit and proper, there is no end to your fit and proper. If your case goes on for 10 years, you can't be appointed as a valuer, which means that there is a bit of incongruence between these two portions of the act, of the rules. And therefore, what you're saying is right. Maybe this fit and proper will get challenged at some point of time in court. But for the moment, the stand which IBBI is taking is that such people will not be appointed as valuers. Okay.
One has to conclude, or one has to say that even after completion of 5 years from the date of expiry of sentence, it might not be fit and proper because he's already convicted from the character or the mindset that he is already involved in one of the false statement or false reporting.
Yeah. So that's possible. It's possible that they will, beyond over and above this, they will say that, okay, let's apply this fit and proper person.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, is there any proper definition of this proper fit and proper?
So
is there anything mentioned?
You will have to go to case law for that, Tushar. I think that was Tushar.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Let's move on. Now, eligibility, qualifications, and registration of valuers, partnership or company. Object
in
should
the
be.
previous slide, the first section, which talks about the registration, or the membership. Just wanted to know, there are 3 years which are given for somebody who's passed the exam for him to be registering himself. I just want to know because I am not in practice right now, and I'm still working within an organization. So once I've cleared the exam, does it mean that I've got 3 years to kind of be a registered valuer, and my exam will have validity for the 3-year period?
Yes, it will be valid for 3 years. So within the 3-year period, you can apply for registration as a valuer. You have to keep in mind that under the new valuation bill, which has been put out for comments, it is said that there will be a grandfathering of the valuers existing valuation course. So if you pass the valuation course and the new bill comes into effect sometime after that, you can still, I think you should be able to apply for, get registered as a valuer, and then carry on from there. Under the new bill itself, you don't really need to go through further exams and whatever they prescribe there. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind also.
I've got one question.
Yes.
So once if that 3 years, within 3 years, he has not registered, he has cleared the exams and he has not registered, means again he want to go for further registration, he has to appear exams once again.
That's right.
And regarding to 271,
in case the new bill comes into effect, then there may be some different way of getting the registration. Yeah. Carry on.
Regarding this 271J, for any reason, if income tax officer has penalized him under section 271J once, it means that that valuer cannot do valuation in life.
It looks like that.
It's very this one, no?
It's very unfair, right?
Unfair, yeah.
Yeah, but that's
see, hardly the 271J is only for 10,000 rupees, I think, penalty. So, of course, maybe to get rid of this headache and all, people may compromise to pay 10,000 rupees and get out of it. But then, as per this section, he is forbidden from valuations for life.
Yeah, so the point which you have to take away from this is to ensure that there is no litigation against you at all. Okay, so you have to.
See, you cannot predict. No, see, for example, when you are issuing a tax audit report, so many things might have been missed or concentration, or or something might have come to the knowledge of the officer. By oversight, we might have looked into so many things, which income tax officer may come into notice, and he may penalize. Okay, after accepting, okay, it is a mistake from our end. So we may compromise by paying 10,000, but this is very serious. No, then only for one-time offense, for life he is banned for valuations.
Yes, it is a problem. It is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't have an answer to it. That's what it says right now.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, can I have the clarity on first para?
This is Mohan Kumar on the.
Yes, 3 years you said, no? 3 years.
Yeah, so 3 years, see, you pass the exam today, you have 3 years time to approach the RBO and get registered.
Okay.
Okay. Right, let's move on. Eligibility and qualifications and registration of valuers, partnership or company. This answers the question which Jigar had. Object should be to render professional or financial services, including valuation services. It is not a subsidiary, joint venture or associate of another company or body corporate. It is not undergoing insolvency resolution or is an undischarged bankrupt. All the partners are directors to be registered valuers where there are less than 3. So in case there are 2 partners, 2 of them should be registered valuers. And at least 3 partners or directors to be registered where there are 3 or more. At least 1 partner director should be registered valuer for the asset class for the valuation of which it seeks to be a registered valuer. Now this section is in relation to registration of a partnership or a company as a valuer. In case a chartered accountant firm of 2 partners wants to be also a valuation firm, they can register as valuation firm. Okay. And the only constraint is that both of them need to be registered valuers. Now, suppose there is a chartered accountants firm of, let us say, 5 partners. Then 3 of them have to be registered valuers, and then they can go and seek registration as a valuation firm. Okay, so that's as a valuation firm. So in Mumbai, for instance, you have SSP, and there are some valuation firms which are basically doing only valuations. Okay, so however, in case a chartered accountants firm of 2 partners, one of them becomes a registered valuer, or even company secretary firm or cost accountants firm, one of them becomes a valuer. Now, the firm cannot issue valuation reports. It has to be necessarily done only by that valuer in his individual capacity. Okay, so this is the point to be made. Any further question on this, Jigar, or we'll carry on? Okay, we'll carry on then. Now, here, this is the experience which is required, a minimum of 3 years. You can see it on screen. Yeah.
You have said
I'm not getting that question.
the previous slide.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of this? The director should be, one of the directors should be.
Okay, so this that's a good point. Now we have 3 types of valuers, which is land and building, plant and machinery, and securities and financial assets. So 3 classes of assets are there. Now, if there is a partnership, there is, let us say, a partnership firm of, let us say, 3 partners, all of whom are registered valuers, but each one of them is in a different discipline. So one is a land and building valuer, the second is a plant and machinery valuer, the third is a securities financial assets valuer. Now, when the person is doing securities and financial assets valuation, the person who has to sign that that report should be the SFA valuer. If you're doing a land and building valuation, then it should be signed by the land and building valuer. I think this is the limited point of what this section is saying. Got it?
Okay.
Okay. Right. Now, qualifications. Here you can see for yourself that let's just look at the last one. Membership of professional institutions, a minimum of 3 years of experience. And basically the point here is that it should be, when you're looking at a graduate degree, it should be a graduate degree in the specified discipline. Okay. So for instance, if you are having, let us say, a valuer in, let's say you've done a BSc in agriculture, can you be a plant and machinery valuer? It's probably not possible. Okay, so you need to have experience in the specified discipline. Okay, so now coming to the questions here again. Which of the following is not a prescribed asset class under the valuation rules? So here, let me...
Sir, what do you mean by experience, sir? Just passing the exam and, or what? We need to work somewhere or some, how it is?
So for instance, suppose you're working for me for 3 years, you will be having 3 years of valuation experience, right? Because I'm a valuer. Got it? Now, suppose, however, you are working for a person who is not doing valuations. Suppose you are working in a merchant banker firm, like say Tushar's firm. Then you have experience. Tushar has experience. He's
Yes,
in a
sir.
merchant banker firm.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay, so I think I've got the answer here on the people have said that it's enterprise. So that's the answer. Let's move on. Which of the following is not eligible to be registered as a valuer?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have answers from, everybody's got the answers here. Dwarakanath, Kaushik Raj, Akila. Akila has got C, HUF. And so everybody is getting the answers right here. You're perfectly correct. Okay, so moving on. Registration of valuers. Rule 5, IBPI conducts a valuation exam for individuals who possess qualifications and experience. Rule 4, have completed their educational course as a member of an RVO as a primary member to test their professional knowledge, skills, values, and ethics. Individuals who pass the exam shall receive an acknowledgement of having passed the exam held by BSc or NSC. They may appear for the exam any number of times. So here again, let me just point out that some of us who have become registered valuers have taken about 5 attempts to do it. It's not because the exam is tough. It's just that you need to be able to prepare for it before going and writing it. Okay. Of course, Ravi will be helping you in making sure that you're adequately prepared to go and write the exam by giving you all the material, but the effort has to come from you. Okay.
Excuse me,
Rule
sir.
6.
Hello.
Yeah.
Even can you come back to previous slide, sir?
Yeah.
Even BSc conducts exam.
See, at the point of time when I wrote the exam, it was being held by BSc
Okay.
IT. Okay. Now I think it has been shifted to NSE subsidiary.
Okay. So, but
Okay.
it is on behalf of the IBBI only they conduct.
Yes, on behalf of IBBI itself. Correct. That's right.
But now we have to take as a security valuer. So it is conducted by exam and IBBI is authorized NSDL.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Sir,
Thank you.
is there any time limit for completing your 50 hours of training and passing the examination? Number of attempts, no restriction. My question is completing 50 hours training and now is there any restriction to complete the examination within such time? No.
There is no restriction, but you have to keep in mind that every year you have to pay this primary membership fee to the RVO. Some RVOs are charging, let us say, 5,000 rupees a year as membership fee as a primary member. Okay, so they will ask you to renew it probably. Okay, let's move on.
What is the meaning of primary member?
Okay, so right now when you have joined IIV RVO, you have joined IIV RVO as a primary member. Once you pass the exam, then you can get appointed as a, you can get a valuer membership. Okay, so that answers your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, now in Rule 6, an individual may apply for registration Form A to IBBI. Application is vetted and recommended by the RVO. A partnership may apply in Form B. IBBI grants 21 days to remove deficiencies or submit additional documents or clarifications or require a personal appearance. If satisfied, it will grant a certificate of registration in Form C within 60 days of receipt of the application, excluding the time above. If it is of the prima facie opinion that registration is not to be granted, it will communicate the reasons within 45 days, excluding the time above. So the good thing about this is if you're not being appointed, you'll know within 45 days. If you don't get it within 45 days, okay, within 60 days, you'll know that you're being appointed. Okay. So, but you have to remember the forms and you have to remember the periods of time. So 21 days to remove deficiencies. 45 days, they will communicate to you the reasons for refusing the registration. And then if the applicant has 15 days to submit an explanation to enable IBBI to form a final opinion in case your application has been rejected. And after considering the explanation, IBBI will form a final opinion to either accept or reject the application by an order, giving reasons within 30 days of receipt of the explanation. Now, once IBBI has done that, it's up to you to go to court in case you don't agree. So, conditions of registration.
So, what are the scenarios in the IBB can reject generally?
So, it is, for instance,
all the eligibility criteria.
Correct, fit and proper person. And that fit and proper person, like Tushar says, is very dangerous because anything can fit and come under fit and proper person. Okay. The valuer shall at all times possess eligibility qualifications and experience criteria specified, comply with Act, rules, bylaws of RVO, only do valuations for classes for which he is registered, take prior permission before shifting membership to another RVO, maintain records of each assignment for at least 3 years from completion, comply with the code of conduct of the RVO, and other conditions applied to partnerships and companies. Okay, now out of completely as an unrelated topic, let me just ask.
Abram.
Yes.
Please go to the previous slide. In that case, we are going to the member of the IIV RVO.
Yeah, this slide, right?
Yeah. So, if we want to shift to the ICI RVO, then we have to take the permission from the IIV.
Yes, you have to. You have to take permission from both sides and then go there. Meaning that first and foremost, you have to take permission from IIV RVO to exit, and you have to take the permission of IBBI of ICAI RVO to enter. Okay, but let me just point out something to you. ICAI RVO, the bulk of the SFA valuers are registered there, which is close to around 60% of the valuers are with ICAI RVO. However, the point which I always make to valuers whom I meet is that there is nothing wrong with going and registering with any other valuer. I'm personally a member of ICMA also, even though I am registered with ICAI RVO. But I do know that the people who are registered in ICMA RVO are also equally good. Now, if you just keep in mind that your chances of any of the valuers of the smaller institutes being put onto some of the governing boards is far, far higher. So Ravi, for instance, being a chartered accountant, is an integral member. He has got senior positions in IIB RVO also, which is difficult to get in ICAI RVO. If people want their voice to be heard, there's nothing wrong with going to one of the smaller RVOs. Okay. Because all RVOs are equal in the eyes of IBBI. Okay, just keep that in mind.
As of now, how many RVOs are there registered by, approved by IBBI?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 11 maybe there. There was even one ACVA, which has one member, where I've also been a faculty in their valuation program. So that's also, there are many RVOs now. Okay. But IIB RVO has been most active in Bangalore at least. And it has been the pioneer in getting this evaluation course done online. And that you have to appreciate the work which Ravi and IIB RVO have done. Okay. Even ICA RVO is now going online, but I think that IIB RVO is the pioneer in this.